on to what we've already given up. It's like we're pacing around the obvious. Separate lives, different stories. 2 out of 4 of us are all fed up. Well, you and I play with fire, but don't say nothing. Oh, we're both busted. We'll get what's coming after you. No, don't say nothing. Or bon voyage to rendezvous. Trade fights for better views. We both need something new. Maybe we should just tell them. I should've think I had somebody. So long to rendezvous.
Hello, hive-minded readers, and welcome to the Books and the Bees podcast. Just like bees play a crucial role in pollinating flowers and sustaining life, books pollinate minds and nurture the soul. We see the connection between the two, the delicate dance of ideas and stories that enrich our lives.
I'm Cody.
And I'm Hailey.
Welcome to our podcast. Hello, Hailey.
Hello!
Episode 3.
Yes. Fine.
Whoop, whoop.
We're out here. I know. Another
It's been 3
episode.
weeks.
I know. Does not
Yeah.
feel like that long.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't. This week snuck up on me, though. I was not prepared for it to be Wednesday already.
Me either. Yeah. And these last few weeks have just been a nightmare for me. So it's like, I feel like January is taking forever. But last day of January in the books.
Last day of January. Absolutely. Yeah. It's been a super crazy month for me, too. Very busy and never ending, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
But, happy to be here. Love recording the podcast. So,
Yes, exactly. Always look forward to the Wednesdays when we record.
me too.
So should we just get into what we're reading?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Cody, what are you reading?
Yeah, I'll start. I am reading a short story collection called The Best American Science Fiction and Fantasy 2023, which is edited by the series editor. His name is John Joseph Adams, and the guest editor for this year is R.F. Kuang, who is, I don't know if I've talked about her on the pod or not, but she's one of my favorite authors. And I'm so excited to read any content from her, even if it's just the introduction to a short story collection, because she's such a good author. And this is one of my favorite things to read every year. I actually just started reading these. They come out with one every year, and I just started reading the 2022 last year. And it's 20 short stories that are curated. I think the way they do it is John, like I know him, I'm calling him John, like we're best friends, but I think he picks 80 stories from the previous year. And then the guest editor every year picks 20 from the 80.
Oh, wow.
And so they get to kind of curate what's in the collection. And you can definitely tell between the guest editors what they like. And R.F. Kuang's stories so far have been really academic, scientific. She's a PhD student doing, I think, Chinese literature is what her PhD is in. And so she's very much in the academia side of things. And I really appreciate that. And so all the short stories have been in that kind of bent, and I've really enjoyed all of them. I'm about halfway through. I think I read the 10th one this morning, and it's been really good.
Nice.
It's also, it's been really fun. It's also one of my New Year's resolutions is to read more short story collections. So I get to chalk at least one off the list with this one.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds really cool. 80 stories, though. Oh, my goodness.
I know. Could you imagine having to pick between 80 stories?
I don't think I could ever pick between 80 stories. How do they narrow it down? That's just wild.
I have no idea. Yeah. I mean, even getting down to 80 out of all the short story collections that are out there, like getting to 80 seems really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot. But
I don't
that's
think
really
I
cool.
would. Yeah. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. And he has a lot of other ones too. I think they have a mystery thriller one, and there's a like an essay collection one, and a science and nature one. So he's pretty busy, and the guest editors kind of rotate through. So check them out if you want to. They're really good. I recommend them. Hailey, what are you reading right now?
I have to be honest. I'm still chugging along through Godkiller. It's been, yeah, like I said, kind of before. It's just been a really crazy last few weeks, and I started it with every intention to just like blaze through this book, but I just can't. There's so much like changes happening with like work stuff. So like my ability to like read after work is about a zero right now. Um, but yeah, and so yeah, I'm just still reading that. But I've gotten a little bit further into the book. So far, without getting too spoilery, the characters are like some new characters have been introduced that seem like they might be key players. We're getting to know a little bit more about the main character and a little bit also more about the gods that the main character is with. So yeah, it's starting to pick up a little bit, which is nice.
Good, good.
Yeah, yeah. And then I so I believe it was in our first episode that I mentioned. I said something about Wattpad, and I just want to, kind of for the record, and for our listeners out there who might maybe they post fan fiction on that site or whatever. When I said that I don't like Wattpad, I just want to make sure that I'm being clear that it's not the fiction on Wattpad; it's the Wattpad itself. I always found it to be very not user friendly. So like yeah, that's just wanted to clear that up. I had a little bit of a guilty conscience because I was like, oh man, what if people listen to that and go, well, what a snob, you know what I mean? So don't want that to be the vibe. So yeah, just wanted to clear that up. And then another little housekeeping thing. Um,
Beekeeping
yeah,
thing.
beekeeping, exactly. So in the honey scale, when I said the Fault in Our Stars, listen, it's been years since I have read that book, like years. And so I was like, I should probably look up to, make sure, double check. And I should have fact checked before, but I didn't. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that there might have been something in there. And sure enough, there is a sex scene in that book. So, but I don't, it's from what I read and what refreshed my memory is that it's nothing graphic. It's nothing too like hot and heavy. So I might still keep it in that honey drizzle because I think sometimes you can still have those kind of encounters and it still be like a sweet embrace and a tender touch of romance. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, just
yeah,
wanted to clear those up before we get started.
yeah. Well, I'm glad we cleared it up.
Yeah.
For the hive mind out there, we are new to the recording world. We're not used to having our conversations be recorded, and
Hmm.
we have notes when we're recording, but we kind of speak off the cuff so that we have a casual tone to the podcast. And so sometimes we mess up,
Yeah.
and you know we
Yeah.
come on and fix it, and then we move
Hmm.
on
Yep.
because we don't want to upset anybody. We definitely would never imply that fan fiction is bad on any site,
Yeah. No.
just because it's on a site.
Yeah.
But it's good to know that it's not as user friendly for you compared to
Yeah.
other sites. That's
Hmm.
something that other people can take. I've personally never used a fan fiction site more than like maybe 5 minutes. My sister's really big into fan fiction, and she made me download an app that I couldn't even tell you the name of it. So I'm really bad at being able to tell you what it would be. But it's all about how to
Yeah.
be better readers here, not how
Right.
to be,
Exactly.
snobby.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and I'm a big fan of fan fiction. I mean, yeah. Where would we be without like all of the creative minds in the world? So
Yeah, absolutely.
much respect for people who put themselves out there like that.
Yeah, for free too.
Yeah, for free.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. We love you. We love you,
Yes.
fanfic writers.
Yes, we appreciate you guys so much.
I do use a. Do you know what the comic version of fan fiction is? What is that app called?
Oh, like it's not like webtoons, is it? Or like some
It
sort of
might be
something
Webtoons.
along
I'm
those
looking it up.
lines?
Yep, it's Webtoon.
Okay. Yeah, I
I
have
actually
heard.
do read a couple stories on Webtoon, so
Okay, okay.
yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that. So,
Yeah, I've read. There's one romance one that I read. This is going to sound bad. I read it to fall asleep because it's very relaxing and
Mhm.
like the story's kind of chill and cozy. So when I'm having trouble sleeping, I usually read those. I think it's called Let's Play.
Mm.
Pretty sure it's called Let's Play, and it's kind of like a gamer romance, sort of a love triangle going on. And then the one that I like to read on there that is not cozy at all is called Everything Is Fine, and it's a
Mm.
horror comic. And I won't say anything because it's just wild. And if you are into crazy dystopian fiction, I recommend checking it out. But yeah, we love the fanfic out there. We love all the people that are working hard to make content that people
Mhm.
can easily access. So,
Yeah,
and the honey scale is we invented it and we
yeah,
can change it however we want to.
exactly, exactly. It's and at some point, I need to remind myself to post it on our Instagram, um,
Oh yeah, we should
so
do
that
that.
people
That's a good
have
idea.
yeah, so they have a more visual of what we're kind of talking about. I'm a very
Yeah,
visual person, so
I like that.
yeah.
And we'll probably add books to it as we go through. We're both new to the honey scale, just like all of our viewers are. So,
Hmm.
we'll probably add books to it and make it more accurate. And people are going to be different too. A honey drizzle to somebody might be a hive hug to somebody else. So
Oh yeah, exactly, and
you never
it's pretty
know.
subjective.
It is. Yeah, it is. Okay. So we are actually going to cover a really interesting is not the best word maybe for this topic. And I do want to give a little bit of a content warning because we're not going to be intense, I would say, but we are going to talk about book bans today.
Hmm.
And we're going to be covering anti LGBTQ bills and um, other content along those lines. So if that's something that bothers you, you might want to skip. But we're basically going to talk about book bans as a whole and
Hmm.
include the types of books that are getting commonly banned, which are usually non-white authors and non-straight authors.
Yep,
And
unfortunately.
unfortunately, yeah, and unfortunately, um, as somebody who lives in the state of Idaho, the reason we decided to talk about it is because my state of Idaho is currently pushing legislation to they're not calling it a book ban even though it totally is a book ban. They
Mhm.
are pushing a bill that is going to allow individuals to complain to libraries, especially for public libraries and school libraries, to remove content that is vaguely determined as sexually explicit, nudity, sadomasochistic abuse, or harmful to minors is the official term from the bill, which is a pretty vague sentence if you think about all the things
Yeah,
that could include. The Bible, for example, I think would fall under that
yeah.
category. So, very vague. And if this bill passes, it would actually allow individuals to sue the school or the library $250 every time the library was caught not following this bill. Last year, this bill failed last year in Idaho because the charge was going to be $2,500,
Oh my
and the
gosh.
governor vetoed it because he thought it was going to be like a hunting scheme where people would try to get a lot of money, obviously.
Yeah.
So they've dropped it to 250, which is still a lot of money.
Hmm.
And there's going to be some other extra steps to try to make it more difficult. But basically, it's a book ban where anybody who wants to can complain that a library is providing material to a minor. And if it's found to be not taken care of, the library can be fined $250 for every offense. And that can add up really heavily, I would say.
Yeah. And that's so hard when libraries and school libraries are already underfunded.
Yeah,
Oh
absolutely.
my gosh. That's awful.
Yeah. And it's, obviously librarians are totally against it. There was a huge initiative to go, a little bit inside ballpark with the way the legislature works in Idaho. They
Mhm.
have a committee hearing, and if it passes through the committee, it goes to either the Senate or House floor, and then it goes to the committee on the other side, and then to the other floor, and then to the governor for signature. And there was a committee meeting on this bill last week. I think it was on the 15th, and 20 people showed up to talk about the bill. And I think 12 of those people were against the bill. And most of them were librarians and bookstore owners and just overall people who are readers and understand what a bill like this does. And it was sent back to committee. Um,
Mhm.
and hopefully that means it will die. It will not pass through the legislature this year, which would be great for Idaho.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's true, if that's going to happen, but
Right.
um, it's definitely possible that it could happen. But we wanted to talk about book bans as a whole and
Mhm.
kind of use Idaho as a template because a lot of states are either implementing a book ban or have in the past. And, we're here to talk about how much we hate book bans.
Yeah. There's something. There's something, all
There's
right.
something.
When
Yeah.
I, gosh, it was in the last like few years, I feel like it started, at least I started to uh, see more activity around book bans. Um, Probably since like 2020, 2021-ish is when I started seeing things. And I think the first state that I was seeing it the most in was Florida, which
Hmm.
shocker. But um it doesn't surprise. I mean, so a little background context from our listeners. I'm originally from like Washington State, so and I was fairly adjacent to the state of Idaho. So like the politics of Idaho is not news to me. So, I, and while I think it's awful that it's happening, I'm not really surprised that it's happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I just, but I feel like it's up to us as readers to really, drive home to our local government, right? Because that's where it starts, is our local government, and really drive home that we disagree and that's not something that we want to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that so many people came out to oppose the bill. I wish
Mhm.
I did know that it was happening. I found out the morning of that there
Mm.
was going to be a committee hearing, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it. But I know, we have a local bookstore here in the city that I live that made a big appearance, and all of the libraries made a big appearance. And so I hope that the opposition is going to keep the bill dead in Idaho. But
Mhm.
it keeps coming up every year. There's bound to be something that happens. Florida is also pushing a bill similar to this one. There's probably other
Mhm.
states. It's kind of hard to find actually how many states are doing book bans. Maybe because it's so early in the year and some sessions haven't ramped up yet, but
Yeah.
and it sucks.
Yeah, it does suck. It's awful. And it's honest, I feel like it almost sets precedence, right? Like it's one of those things like any type of like social media type or along those lines. Anything to do with that, it starts to set precedence of what is and isn't okay for them to kind of, and by them I mean like our government, local, federal, etc., to get sneaky with it, and then they're like, well, now we have bills to stand on, and
Yeah.
it gets real sticky. And I, unfortunately and regrettably, am not well versed enough in like the political in and outs of like the jargon and whatnot for like government stuff. So it's hard for me to speak on some of this, and I don't want to speak out of turn or out of my ass. So I don't want to say the wrong thing or misspeak
Yeah.
in such a topic like such as this. But it definitely in researching some of this stuff and finding out some of these things, it definitely at least for me, lights a fire under my butt to kind of be a little bit more aware, because I think that it's almost, to me, feels like they do this a little bit on purpose, where they kind of just sneak it in there,
Hmm.
because if no one knows, or if no one's loud about it, then it's easier to get things done.
Yeah, it is. And I think the biggest challenge too is that just about every state does things differently on the government
Hmm.
level. And so, the
Right.
way I described how Idaho passes a bill is not how every other state passes a bill.
Right.
And so, it might be completely different in the state that you live. And so,
Hmm.
if you are really passionate about book bans, we're going to be talking about ways to be active throughout the episode, but definitely paying attention to your legislature. Not every legislature is in session year round. Not
Hmm.
every legislature is in session every year. Like Idaho's in
Hmm.
session from the first Monday of January until usually March, April, and then they wrap
Hmm.
up. Nevada, for example, they have a session every other year for, I think it's 90 days or something like that. And so,
Okay.
every state has its own intricacies and challenges. And so it can be really hard to be informed and to keep track of what's happening just because of how different every state is.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah. And, I'm just going to say it. I fucking hate book bans. We have an explicit rating on this podcast. I'm going to drop the F bomb. I can't stand them. I I don't know if you ever had an experience with book banning when you were in school, but my parents were very lax, I would say, on my
Hmm.
reading. I started reading Stephen King when I was 14. I think maybe that's a
Hmm.
little young to start reading Stephen King, but I turned out okay, I think. And, if I had any problems with what I was reading, my parents would usually talk me through it and, we'd have a conversation about it. And I think that's what
Hmm.
books are meant to be at the end of the day is, we have books that are entertainment, but we also have books that make us grow and think as a species and as a race. And especially when you're targeting books that are assisting or pushing forward the LGBTQ information and the non-white, agenda is not the right word I want to use for that, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's not, it's information. It's a
Yeah.
different, for lack of a better term, mindset, right? It's a
Yeah.
different walk of life, and I feel like, uh, my sociology background is going to come out a little bit. Humans tend to be afraid of difference, right?
Hmm.
So when people of a certain status quo are met with differences where they're not in control of it, it tends to make them feel uncomfortable. Uh, i.e., and I'm just going to come out and say it, white people. Um,
Yep.
I'm white. I benefit from this. I'm going to acknowledge that. It's That's where that comes from. Um, it you know, uh, yeah, like the it's the uncomfortability that things might not that white people might not be in charge
Yeah.
as much as, you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
I hope I'm explaining that properly, and I'm not misconstruing or mincing my words. But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, we're both white, so
yeah,
it's not like we can talk as a representative for those communities, but it's
right.
pretty obvious that when you look at the list, and we're going to talk about the top 10 or so most banned books of last year,
Mm-hmm.
they're disproportionately against the LGBTQ community and against the non-white community. And when something like that's happening, it's pretty apparent that you're trying to shut down a narrative that the
Right,
straight white men mostly don't want to push. And that's not the way our country should be. It's not the way we want it to be. And so,
right.
we're here to stand against it however we can.
Exactly, exactly. And I feel like it starts with information.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned it before, but we actually have a little bit of statistics because I'm kind of a data nerd.
Yeah.
And just a little bit of one. Um, in 2020, there were 156 bans or attempts to ban or restrict library materials just in the United States in that year. So that was 156. In 2021, there were 729. That's like
Wow.
a seven. That's like seven times as high in just 1 year. And then
Yeah.
in 2022, which I think is the most recent data I could find, I couldn't find 2023 data. I don't think they've compiled it yet.
Yeah, I think
It
it's too
was,
soon.
yeah, I think so too. It was 1,269 attempts to ban or restrict materials in a library. That is just an
That's
insane
insane.
increase over
It's
2 years.
almost double.
Yeah.
That's wild. I mean, I'm not gonna say that I'm surprised, but that number to see it,
Yeah.
on a piece on a page, that's wild.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, I don't necessarily remember as a kid ever uh hearing or being privy to book bans. I don't remember. I remember there being a little bit of uproar about Twilight, I think, if I remember correctly.
Oh,
There
yeah.
was a little bit of
Yeah. I
like,
think
oh my
so.
gosh, because I think in like the fourth book, there's that one thing that happens. I'm not going to spoil it for people who maybe haven't read it and want to read it. Um, but I remember some of my friends actually, and also um, Harry Potter. Not that I necessarily want to bring up the author, but
Yeah.
the the series, I do remember having friends whose parents would not let them read the series because it talked about magic, um, which was like a big no no. I don't know what religious sect they were a part of. And no disrespect if our listeners are religious. More power to you. But I remember my
Yeah.
friends, and I was like, why can't your parents? Why can't you read these? Like, that's so silly. Because like your parents, my parents were very open, were very supportive of me reading. Like I mentioned, I think in a previous episode, I think it was the first one, I read the Marked series by PC Cast with my grandma. Like, we were I was in like middle school or something when I read that series. So pretty, PG-13 plus topics for someone who was like 12 at the time, I think, when I was reading
Yeah.
them. So, yeah, it's just wild.
Now that you mentioned Harry Potter, I actually had a memory. I had neighbors and
Mhm.
when I was a kid. Okay, we all have neighbors. I don't know why I said the sentence that way.
Well,
Unless
you don't
you,
know if you lived in like a rural area, right?
yeah, but I had neighbors when I was a kid, and I was really close with the neighborhood, with the next door neighbor's son, and they were extremely religious. I would say extreme because they believed that watching television was a sin because
Mm.
acting was lying. Lying is a sin, one of the 10 Commandments, and so they didn't have a TV. And we grew up in the Harry Potter age. We don't have to talk about the author. I don't even want to mention her name on the podcast, but
Right, same.
Harry Potter was a big part of I think both of our childhood. I think that's
Yeah.
fair to say.
Mhm.
And I read all the books when they were coming out, and I distinctly remember going over to his house and I was reading. I think it was the third book, and yeah, I was told that I was not allowed to bring that. I don't remember what explicitly they called it, but they didn't say very nice things about the Harry Potter.
Wow.
And then they told me they went to a book burning party for that book.
Oh my gosh.
They like all did a bonfire, and they all bought as many copies of the book as they could, and they burned it because they didn't want it to be in the schools or
That's so
whatever.
wild. That's some like World War.
Like it would have stopped anything,
Yeah, right?
honestly.
I mean, they are burning books that you're already reading. Like, I don't
Yeah,
already have it in my
it
possession.
was already selling millions
Yeah.
of copies
Mhm.
every book. So
Yeah. How
and they increased the sales by buying
yeah,
the books
right?
that they burned.
It kinda reminds me of, like, when people got so upset about I think it was, like, the Nike or something recently where people were like, "Oh my gosh, we can't support this anymore," and people were, like, burning their, like, Jordans that they had already bought, and I'm like, "You already spent the money. I don't"
Yeah, yeah,
like, they got theirs. I don't think that that's, like, the goal here, but, gosh.
Yeah.
That's some
Yeah.
like
It was pretty
that's
crazy.
some like what, World War I, World War II, when they were doing that, when they were doing big old burnings of books. I think I saw that somewhere once upon a time. That was a thing that was happening. Was they were burning books because it mentioned things that that party was not, that they didn't like, and they were like, well, guess we'll burn some books. It's frightening.
Yep.
That's what it is. It's frightening.
It is. It's really frightening. And I think I don't hear much about book burnings anymore. I could be out of touch. Um, but the book bans is absolutely on an increase, and it's it's just frustrating as, an individual who likes to experience the perspectives of other walks of life, and to not just read about white men, especially when we're talking about classics and things like that. It's just, it's frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Could you imagine how dull life would be?
Yeah. Huck Finn, hate to say it, boring as shit. Hate that book.
Boringest book I've ever read in my
Um,
life.
Sorry, don't like it.
Yeah. Like,
Don't want to read it.
yeah. Snooze fest, truly. No offense, Mark Twain. Is that who wrote
Yeah,
that book? I don't remember.
is it Mark Twain? That's a really
I
good
don't know.
question. I think it's Mark Twain.
Memory serves me right. I think it was, but could be wrong.
I'm gonna look it up real quick.
Yeah. I love that we were both like,
It is definitely Mark Twain. Published in 1885.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
Ugh.
Oh, UK in 1884. United States in 1885. Man, that's a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gee willikers. That's, ugh.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about do we talk enough about the numbers? Is there anything you want to mention?
Yeah.
I know you have
let me
you are like the
see.
sociology guru here. So,
Yeah. I am. I do have a degree. Actually, it's a degree in social services, technically, with a minor in minority studies.
oh,
Oh yeah, double
yeah. So
minor. Yeah. And,
we have an expert with us
oh
today.
yeah. Listen, I've been out of college for like, oh gosh, oh my gosh, almost 7 years now. Ew, I hate that number. That's weird to think about. But yeah, and I haven't really been I haven't delved into stuff like this since. But yeah, I do have a little blurb here about the American Library Association documented 1,269 demands to censor library books and resources in 2022. I think we already kind of discussed that. And it's been the highest number of attempted book bans since the American Library Association began compiling data about censorship. There we go. In libraries more than 20 years ago. The unparalleled number, and this is straight from their website, just so our listeners are clear. The unparalleled number of reported book challenges in 2022 nearly doubles the 729 book challenges reported in 2021 of the record 2,571 unique titles targeted for censorship. The most challenged and reasons cited for censoring the books are listed below. And so basically, those reasons were... So we're looking at their challenge for LGBTQIA plus content, claimed to be sexually explicit. They had things like depiction of sexual abuse, EDI content, claimed to be sexually.
EDI.
Yeah, EDI. Let me double check to make sure I don't butcher that acronym.
I'm not familiar with that, I don't think.
I think it's okay. For me, it's a fairly new term that I've been hearing recently, and I'm not sure if it's considered necessarily one of those like buzzwords, right? Because we had some like EDI. Not Google telling me that it's electronic data interchange. Get out of here. Oh my gosh. Thanks, Google.
Yeah, we can't have those. We cannot have our kids can't read about whatever the heck that
No,
is.
absolutely not. Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Oh,
So,
DEI.
yeah, so maybe they meant DEI, and maybe it's just a
Okay.
switch up of that acronym. I could be totally wrong for our listeners. I don't want to. It's yeah, it's saying so. It's just a flip flop of the words:
Okay.
equity, diversity, and inclusion slash inclusivity.
Okay.
So
I've
that's what
seen
EDI
DEI
is.
a lot, but I haven't seen EDI before, so I'm
Yeah,
glad we looked that up. Yeah.
yeah, same. Um, so, which again, not surprised. I tended though to notice that the common one of the common ones, obviously besides LGBTQIA plus, was excuse me, sorry, was the sexually explicit. Now, I did make a note. I know we talk a lot about romance and romantasy and how that's kind of taking this huge uproar in like the book talk. So if we have any like book talk listeners or listeners who enjoy that type of content, that's one of the ones that they're gunning for, you know what I mean? And not to like fearmonger or anything, but that is something that was pretty common in almost every single one of those book bans. And I did notice on, so if you go to the ALA.org website, um, they do have a list of the 13 books, I believe, that are currently um, like the top 13 right now.
Yeah, I think those are for 2022. Yeah, I think they do a list every year, I noticed.
Okay, so they might just not have came out. Okay.
Yeah, I think
But
so.
okay. So the number 10 on that list was A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. So, and it had 48 challenges. Not that that's a giant number, but that's a pretty substantial number when we're talking about, and it was challenged for sexually explicit content. So, it's not just what maybe some of us would automatically assume would be on that list, because I never would have thought that A Court of Mist and Fury would make it onto that list
Yeah,
necessarily. Um,
yeah, I agree.
and I feel like it's almost like a privilege of me to not have known that, for me
Yeah.
to not have known that, because and I'll come out and say it, I don't read a lot of nonfiction books. I try to read and support LGBTQIA plus authors and books. Um, I think in our last, no, not in our last episode, I might have just noted it as one of my books that I had read that had like male content.
Mm. Hmm.
And for our listeners, if that's confusing, meaning like sexually, like male, like gay, um, male character, two male characters. There we go. I keep saying male, so people are going to understand what I'm saying. Um, but that's the term, and I'm trying to remember what the like lesbian genre is called, and I cannot remember what it's called. But anyways, I try to look for books with those kind of themes, and I do read them. I did read a book last year. Let me just pop that up real quick so I'm not butchering the title or the author. It's called Him, like Him, Him. And then there's a follow up book named Us, and there's a third book in the series I haven't read yet. But it's by Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy. And I don't know if it's like a dual author sort of situation, but it is. Oh, Sapphic is that just, sorry for our listeners.
Mm.
Sapphic is, I believe, the lesbian like type genre of books. Could be wrong, don't quote me. Um, but yeah, so, content like that could be up for debate for with these book bans.
Yeah, it's it's true. I did hear a little bit about A Court of Mist and Fury being banned,
Mm-hmm.
especially in school libraries. I think is a big
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Oh,
Which, okay, I don't like book bans. I personally think it's up to the parents to have these conversations with the kids and decide if they want to maybe say, maybe you're a little young for this. I'm not saying we should have a court mission fury in the child's section because it has adult themes to it, and it should be, I think, addressed by a parent. I don't think it's the responsibility of a school librarian to necessarily do that. I don't think it's the responsibility of public librarians, who are vastly underpaid and vastly overworked, to have to think when they're working, oh my gosh, if this little kid wants to check out this book, and they might not even be able to stop them. Honestly, how much power do librarians really have to stop somebody from checking out a book if they really want to? And they potentially get fined $250 because of this issue, I think is ridiculous. And so, I really think it's up to the parents to make a decision. I think the best thing to do is to have a conversation with your kids about the content. I'm just looking at we're going to post all of the links to the ALA website is where we're getting everything for today. And they have a huge sub website called the Banned and Challenge Books, which is just an amazing resource. And I'm just looking at the list. The number one most banned book in 2022. And I think it's been the most banned since 2020 I think it first came out in 2020. It's called Gender Queer. It's a memoir by Maya Kobabe. I think that's how you pronounce Maya's last name. And it's about Maya's journey to understanding her genderness, Air's genderness. Maya uses Air pronouns. And I really loved the book. It's a graphic novel memoir. The art is very beautiful. Maya's story is very empowering. Maya also has some challenges with being on the spectrum. And so just hearing Maya's story and how Maya went through everything, I think is just really powerful. And I would say any kid could read that book and learn so much about a different perspective. The second book is All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. I've also read. It's about a man realizing that he's gay and going through that. I think it's another really great story and absolutely worth reading and discussing with individuals about. Have you read any other books on this list? If I just go through them real quick.
I don't think so. Yeah,
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just run through real quick. I haven't read all of these. Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison is a book that I've really wanted to get to and haven't been able to. It's been challenged for sexual abuse depictions. Oh, here's the EDI label again. EDI content claimed to be sexually explicit. Flamer by Mike Curato is also challenged for LGBTQ content and sexually explicit. Looking for Alaska by John Green was challenged for the same thing. I haven't read that book either, but that's a book I really, really, really want to read. And it just always never comes up to the top of my TBR. Yeah. I haven't read any John Green books, actually.
Think that
Fault in Our Stars, John Green?
That's what I'm trying to remember. Because I know that I'm pretty sure. Well, hold on, let me look it up
There we
again.
go. We have the power of the internet, folks.
We do have the power of the internet. Isn't it great to just have a little source that you can just the tip of your fingers? John Green books. I want to say that he might have wrote no, okay.
I know he wrote Turtles All the Way Down.
Yeah, An Abundance of Catherines.
Oh yeah.
Let It Snow. Will Grayson. The Fault in Our Stars. Paper Towns. Paper Towns I heard was really good.
So he did write Fault in Our Stars.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, he wrote the Anthropocene Reviewed. That's a nonfiction book. We're off on a tangent. Yes. That's a great book. I love that book.
I've been wanting to read that book, actually.
I recommend it. It's really good.
I've heard really good things about it.
Yeah. So Looking for Alaska has also been challenged. The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky has been challenged for the same type of material. Lawn Boy by Jonathan Evison, also banned or challenged for LGBTQIA content. The Absolute True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie, challenge for profanity and sexually explicit content. I really wanted to read this book, and I've heard that there's no sexually explicit content in it, and that
Mhm.
the profanity is one word in the whole book. So, I don't know if that's true, and I might be misspeaking, but definitely seems
Mm.
like it's being over dramatized by people who want to ban. Out of Darkness by Ashley Hope Perez, depictions of abuse, sexually explicit. We mentioned A Court of Mist and Fury by
Mhm.
Sarah J. Maas. Crank by Ellen Hopkins, challenge for drug use and claimed to be sexually explicit. Me and Earl and the Dying Girl by Jesse Andrews, challenge for profanity, claimed to be sexually explicit. And one book that I have read, it's called This Book is Gay by Juno Dawson, obviously challenged for the LGBTQ content, um, challenged for providing sexual education, which is such a ridiculous, like, why would you ban a book
That,
about sexual education? I don't understand.
yeah, I'm not
And
surprised.
claim to be sexually explicit. This book is gay does talk about adult themes. It talks about, especially because Juno, when she wrote the book originally, she transitioned before she wrote this book before she transitioned, and then she updated it after she transitioned, and so it covers a lot of things about being gay and
Mm.
how to uh, go through that and how to talk about
Mhm.
it with your family. Really, really great book. It's almost like a how-to guide on
Mhm.
how to be a member of the LGBTQ family. And I've heard a lot of people within the community that I'm friends with kind of use it as their Bible to talk with their family members and
Wow.
have these difficult conversations. And so for this to be banned, I can understand because I know the type of people who are banning this book, but it's just so frustrating because so many people benefit from this book, and that it's on the
Yeah.
list every year is frustrating to me.
Yeah. And I I feel like there's also something to say about the fact that having books that give you an some insight or a different narrative or a similar narrative, I should say, as to maybe what people who are going through the same thing might need in that time is so integral, I think, to our society and make I just like making people feel less alone in the journeys that they take as they
Yeah.
take them, especially in a journey as like ostracizing as like coming out or transitioning can be. And that, like, I mean, I'm a cisgendered white woman. I'm bisexual. I identify as bisexual, but like, I I feel like it's so important for youths, for adults, for people of all walks of life to be able to have access to books such as this, even if it's just to feel less alone.
Yeah. At the end of the day, life is tough for just about everybody. And there's no reason to take away a book that brings happiness to someone and makes them feel seen and makes them feel heard. I'm kind of
Mm-hmm.
tearing up right now because it frustrates the heck out of me that this happens. And just be nice to everybody. There's no reason to be doing this. And um, yeah, it's just, I'm kind of losing my words a little bit. It's just frustrating
It is.
to know to have a book that can make some kid feel seen and important and loved to
Mm-hmm.
be removed because some old white guy doesn't want to have a conversation with his kids about it.
Right.
Yeah, it's just frustrating.
Yeah, exactly. No, I totally share that sentiment as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I didn't know if we wanted to talk about how important like libraries are to
Oh,
continue to
yes,
exist.
I do. Yes, I'm glad you
Um,
brought it up. Go ahead.
no, in talking about things such as such as book bans, right? We have to remember that libraries are integral to our society, right? Because they're the ones that spread the books. um,
Yeah.
I did write a little blurb, or I notated, there we go, a little blurb about how important they are, that they exist, not only as a way to gather info, but also as a free resource. Um, for instance, it's a great resource for poor people. And I'm just going to come out and say that. So, a little bit of context to why I'm so passionate about that. I did homeless outreach work and homeless census work in college. That was kind of my point of focus, area of focus. There we go. My gosh, I need more coffee. Good grief.
It's
So
late.
that was
It's
kind of
late,
my.
guys. Give us a
It
break.
is late. But yeah, that was my one of my areas of focus. So, like towards the end of my college career was more leaning towards homeless outreach work. Um, Little did I know that I needed to get a master's to become a social worker. Side note,
Yeah.
just a little. uh, but anyways, so for instance, poor people who don't have access to a home library, or like I see Cody kind of noted that libraries are also good for other things like internet, which I totally forgot. And it's true though, right? Like we need libraries for more than just books. And in my brain, the way that my train of thought goes, if they start banning books in libraries that are free resources, what, you know what I mean? Like, does that mean then your access to free internet goes away? Your access to skill building, modes of
Yeah.
skill building goes away. Um, and yeah, so I also wanted to mention that some schools, and I'm mainly talking about private institutions, can ban books willy nilly. Um, we kind of already, I think most of us or most of our listeners probably already kind of understand that concept. But I didn't know this. Libraries are owned by local governments. So we're talking like county government, state government, city government. They kind of set precedents about what those libraries can and can't do, um, which I didn't know that. I honestly was under the impression that libraries were federally owned, um, which was new information to me. And I think that that's really important because, like we've kind of already talked about, it starts local. But yeah, and I also notated that literacy is one of those things that's really important.
Yeah.
Um, and I did some research about literacy rates in the US. Now, the information that I found was not necessarily as recent as I would have liked, but to be quite honest, in the resources that I could find that seem legit, newer information about literacy rates is pretty hard to come by. So, the place that I got this information was usafacts.org, and they talked about mainly literacy rates in 2012, 2014, and 2017. So there really hasn't been, at least that I could find, and maybe our listeners have newer information. I can't imagine that there wouldn't be newer information out there. So, and this, again, like I said, this is a little bit older data because I couldn't personally find anything newer. But I think it's important to kind of, even just this was shocking to me. 21% or 43 million US adults find it difficult to compare and contrast information, paraphrase, or make low level inferences. And according to the PIAAC survey, so which I think is like so it's the program for the International Assessment of Adult Competencies, which is measuring the competency of working age adults ages 16 to 65 in three areas: literacy, numeracy, and digital problem solving. Um, so they have low literacy skills. Now, I do want to caveat this that uh, your ability to read or your access to read to your access to books, let me put it that way, does not necessarily dictate your ability to uh, be a functioning adult or a functioning
Yeah.
human in society. And I obviously know that it's not to downplay the fact that many people suffer from things like dyslexia and like me, calculia. I literally never can remember how to say that freaking word. Where we, our brains literally just struggle out of our own accord, right? It's not like we're like sitting here going, oh, I think I'm going to tap into that today. Where we struggle with things like reading numbers, reading words on a page, that sort of thing. So I do kind of want to take a little bit of a second to kind of acknowledge that literacy doesn't, what am I trying to say? I don't want to misconstrue what I'm saying. Your ability to read is not necessarily reflective of like whether you're illiterate or literate, that sort of thing. There. I
Right.
think I said what I was trying to say.
Yeah, that's good.
Because I know talking about this can be heavy, and I know that people are going to have opinions about this, and it's not that I don't want to have like the wrong opinion, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be unfair to people or disregard certain people that may go, hey, wait a minute, like that's not very right to say, you know what I mean? But
Yeah, I love libraries. I've definitely mentioned it. I get probably like 80% to 90% of my books that I read come from libraries.
Mhm.
They are a tremendous source in a community because they're like basically the last place that you don't have to spend money to be inside of it. It doesn't cost money to go into a library and hang out. For those who don't have access to the internet,
Mhm.
they can use computers and apply for jobs. And there's resume building workshops. I actually used our local library at work to get a language interpreter for someone who spoke Chinese because
Oh,
we
wow.
couldn't find somebody who spoke Chinese in the school. So we started calling around, and our local library had translators, and one of them spoke Mandarin was the language, and so they have that. They have it for Spanish and quite a few other languages. There's information on voting every year. My
Mhm.
library puts out a poster board size um, copy of the ballot for the district that I'm in, and they walk
Mhm.
you through what's going to be on the ballot, and they give you information about how to vote, and you can find out where you need to vote. There are skill building workshops. There are book clubs for folks who want to be engaged in the community. My local library has a knitting club
Mhm.
and a community garden. Like there's so much
Oh,
that
wow.
libraries do that are outside of providing books. And I think if we're not going to realize how important libraries are until we erode them out of society, and we're going to be deprived of a tremendous resource. And I speak as someone who's used a library for a lot of different things. My wife worked at a library for many years. My sister worked at a library for many years. There's so much that librarians and libraries do for a community that should be recognized more and should not
Mhm.
be added their burden to by having to worry about some stupid book ban.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I think it's very important.
Yeah. Cool. Well, before we have some action items that we can do, but before we do that, I think we can lighten it up a little bit and talk about some good things that states are doing. And I know we're
Yes.
being U.S. centric. I think probably
Yeah.
most of our listeners are in the U.S. If you're outside of the U.S., I'd love to hear from you about how book banning is affecting your country because we're both U.S. citizens, and so it's hard for us to see
Mhm.
stuff outside of the United States. But if you are in a country and want to share your experience on book bans outside of the U.S., that'd be amazing. We'd love to hear it. Um, one state has already done a tremendous job of preventing book bans, and that is Illinois.
Mhm. Whoop whoop.
Who, whoop whoop, Illinois, the first state ever to outlaw book bans, banning
Mhm.
book bans. Talk about a great idea. And that took effect this year. January 1st of 2024 was when it started. So officially in Illinois, you can no longer ban a book.
Snaps to Illinois. as a recent Illinoisan, I don't even know if that's the proper term. uh, for context, I moved from Washington State to Illinois fairly recently, and that that just like makes me so happy to hear that. And didn't we see this morning, or didn't you tell me this morning that Washington State also followed suit?
Yes. So this is a article from Book Riot, and I actually just found this like, I don't know, like 2 hours before we started recording. Um, Washington State, New Mexico, Colorado, Kansas, New Jersey, and Massachusetts are all hoping to pass some sort of legislation that's going to combat book banning. And they all look
Hell
kind of
yeah.
different. But the crux of it is they're either going to try to eliminate it completely, like Illinois did, or they're going to keep a committee of individuals who can make or who can listen to a claim on book bans and make a decision, which I think is what most states do. They have a committee that's like in the school district or the county or whatever that decide. And so instead of it being one person, it's a committee of individuals. And the important part that was mentioned specifically about the Washington State bill was that in order to submit a complaint for school libraries, you had to be a parent, which means you
Oh,
can't just be an individual in the community. You have to be a parent of the school you're submitting a complaint to, so that it can't just be some person who's not consuming it, be it their children. And I think that's a great idea. I think all states should do that, because I think there's merit to having a conversation about what books should and shouldn't be in school libraries at specific age levels, but it shouldn't be left up to one person, and it shouldn't be submitted by individuals who are not participating in that school in any way, shape, or form. Absolutely not.
right.
I think that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. That snaps to them for even doing that much, you know? I
Yeah,
think that I feel like this is just my personal opinion, I feel like there's a lot of people without a arm in the race or a leg in the race or whatever that
yeah,
colloquial term is, that are just doing it based off their own agenda. And it really is infuriating because it's like, you don't even like books. Shut up. Like, or you don't have children. Shut up. You know what I mean?
right.
Not to say that people who don't have children can't have opinions on things. Not saying that. But it it irks me to see people who don't have a stake in the game, trying to do things that literally don't even pertain to them truly, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kudos to all those states that we just mentioned. We love to
Yes.
see it. Hopefully that's going to
Hell
be
yeah.
continuing to trend.
Yeah. Snaps to Illinois. Let's go, Illinois. Way to set
Whoop, whoop.
precedents.
Yeah. Killing it.
Yeah.
So we thought we would end the podcast on things that you can do to combat book bans when they come up. And I think we've already covered the ALA, the American Library Association. They have an Office for Intellectual Freedom that's abbreviated OIF, and they're kind of the main public source of information and ways. They are the main source of public information, and they're the main way to help fight book banning when it comes up. And the number one thing they mention is that uh, they probably miss the majority of books that get challenged because they never get told by anybody that the book's being challenged. And so the OIF estimates that it learns only 3 to 18% of book challenges that happen in the United States. So we talked about 1,200 books
Mm-hmm.
challenges in 2022. So if we're being generous, if that's 18%, the highest percentages I think that it is, there's 3-4 times as much challenges happening that they don't hear about. So if you are in a state or county or city where you're seeing a book ban or a book challenge, you should mention it to OIF. You can go onto their website and send them an email, and keep them informed so that they can help fight um, the book ban. There's
Yeah.
also a book ban week, or banned books week, I should say, which for 2024 is September 22nd to 28th. We're definitely going to do something for banned book week. I don't know what, we haven't talked about it, but um, you know,
Yeah.
we got
We
time
got
to
some time.
just
We got some time.
so, and it's a good time to bring awareness about banned books, and you can start a banned books webinar or do some sort of banned books week program with your school or library or bookstore. My local bookstore actually does a banned books week program every year.
Mm.
You can do a readout by reading banned books for that week. A lot of different ways to get activated that way. And one that I really like is writing a letter to a favorite banned or challenged author. I did not think about it, but I
Yeah.
actually am going to write a letter to definitely Juno Dawson and
Yeah.
probably a few of the other authors that we mentioned above, because I think it's such a nice thing to tell them that
Mhm.
what they're doing is great and that we love them, because they probably get a lot of hate online, and to send them a nice message either through an email or through social media, I think is a good idea.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that
So
would be a wonderful idea
yeah.
and really great.
Do you want to mention a few others?
Yeah, yeah. Which well, okay. The other thing that you can do is submit content that address censorship and banned books to the Intellectual Freedom blog. Posts can be news items, reviews, and listicles. Listicles, that's a new word that I've never heard before.
I've never seen that word either, actually. I'm just looking at it for the first time.
What a fun word. So yeah, and then you can perform a play about the freedom to read. The Office for Intellectual Freedom offers a complete stage adaptation, excuse me, of YA novel The Sledding Hill, written by frequently banned author Chris Crutcher. That's interesting. I never would have thought about that.
Have you heard of the book or the novel?
No,
I haven't
no,
either.
I've never. Mm-mm. I'll have to look
Yeah.
into that when we
Yeah, me too.
get done here because that's news to me. Proclaim Banned Books Week at your local library. Use our proclamation template to announce your library's dedication to the freedom to read, which I think is really cool. And I actually think that I've seen a library, not here in Illinois, but I think back home, um, where one of the libraries did like a little, oh my God, what is that called? Like a showcase, like a literal showcase, like a tangible in their library.
Oh,
To kind of talk about the banned books. And I know, kind of speaking back to one of the previous ones, that one of the bookstores that's closer to me, not super close, but closer, they last year did a little readathon type thing with banned books at their bookstore. I think it must have been during Banned Books Week because I didn't really know what it was until I saw the post and kind of looked into it. So, which I think is really cool.
yeah, that's great.
Um,
I
yeah,
love that.
yeah, it was really cool. You can write a letter to the editor, edit and adapt this Read a Banned Book opinion column for your local newspaper, include local Banned Books Week programs so your community can support their right to read. And something that I kind of want to add to that, and because fun fact about me, I also have a journalistic background a little bit. I dabbled in that in college, and WordPress is something that you can use it as a blog. You can use it as kind of an article type uh, program, I guess, for writing your own opinion column for on banned books. So
Absolutely.
there's another resource.
Another thing you could do is you could brush up on banned book history. The latest edition of Banned Books, Defending Our Freedom to Read, contains an annotated list of challenged and banned books, as well as the history of literary censorship. You can help spread the word by using the hashtag Banned Books Week to declare your right to read, especially during Banned Books Week. And I think the really the best thing you could do is just be able to speak out against banning books, whether that's through talking to your local library or letters to the editor or contacting your local library, um, talking to your friends and your family about why books should not be banned, and also just supporting the authors who are writing these books by buying their books. So if you want to buy a copy of This Book is
Mm-hmm.
Gay by Juno Dawson to support her and, encourage that, monetizing what we want to support, I think is a really important thing to do. And something that I was considering doing too is my community. I don't know if yours does. I'm sure there's probably some, but we have a lot of little libraries kind of in my area. I think I have three within like a 2 mile radius of where I live. And so, one thing you could do is if you have the extra money, you could buy a couple copies of these banned books and put them in the local libraries, the little free libraries in the neighborhood. And hopefully those will go to the right individuals and help pass that along. Something you could consider doing if you're able to. And then if you're so inclined, you can also join the Freedom to Read Foundation, which is basically what supports everything we talked about in this episode. There are a variety of levels where you can donate, and that information will be in the show notes too. Through the OIF website, you can buy T-shirts, bookmarks, posters, all that go towards helping OIF to combat book bans all over the United States, which is great. Yeah,
Yeah.
I might buy a T-shirt.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, that I was just gonna say, I know for our listeners who will probably be listening to this on next Tuesday, if you want to check out our Bookstagram, and hopefully you should follow us if you don't follow us already, on Instagram at Books and the Bees Pod, is our Instagram handle. I will be doing some posts, and I'll make sure to link the OIF, whatever. I'll do some research and find their links and do a little shout out and a little infograph maybe of that, so you can check it out and have a more visual idea of what we've been talking about in this episode. And yeah, I think that would
Yeah,
be
I love that.
helpful.
Yeah, and if you want to email things that you do to combat book bans, you can email us at booksandbeespod@gmail.com. There's no the in the email. It's just booksandbeespod@gmail.com, which will also be in the show notes. And let us know how you are combating book bans. If you are trying to fight a book ban in your state, we're just two people. We can't physically go help you in your state, but we could help connect you with OIF or maybe give you ideas if you want any ideas. So we'd love to be able to help you with that. If you're living outside the United States and you're experiencing any sort of book banning, we'd love to hear from you and how we can support you. And if you have an OIF within your country, we'd love to be able to talk about that on the podcast as well. And so, yeah, we're here to stop every book ban that we can and make sure that readers get to read, because I want to read all of the romantasy I can get my hands on.
Yes, same.
Especially Air of Fire, which I have a 12-week wait at the library for right now. I'm so anxious to read that
Oh my
book.
gosh.
It'll be worth it. It'll be
it'll
worth it.
it'll
Yeah.
be worth it. Like worth the wait.
Yeah. Anything else you want to mention, Hailey?
No. Well, I do want to mention, if you have the means and the ability to make your own little free library for your maybe your neighborhood, I think that's a great way to start. I know my brother's wife actually has a little free library. Like they're like made out of wood, and you like put them, and you can just come take a book and then return it, or you can swap out books. They actually started one in their neighborhood back home, so I think that's a really cool and innovative way to maybe buy some banned books, support authors, and get those banned books out into the community for
And
free.
they there's like a website you can officially sign up, right? I know a friend of mine started one, and he's got like a little plaque with a number on it.
Yeah.
So so he can, you know, be a part of the registry, and he's got a like a Facebook page and an Instagram page for the little library, and so you can see the updates about the little free library,
Oh, that's so
which
cute.
is really good. I want to give a quick shout out to, well, let me give you information before I give a shout out. I didn't tell Haley this, but
Oh.
I just made an Apple ID yesterday, and I submitted our podcast to go on to Apple Podcast. And so hopefully within the next, it said it can take up to 2 weeks to get processed, but hopefully in the next 2 weeks, we'll be on Apple Podcasts. So, you know, we're not talking to the Apple Podcast listeners right now, but if you're listening to this in the future, we obviously made it on Apple Podcasts. So thanks for being patient. For those on Spotify, thank you so much for listening to us, or on any other podcasting platform. We really appreciate you.
Mhm.
If you want to give us a review on your podcast app, please feel free to do so, because it does help us reach more viewers, and we'd love to be able to, you know, get more active participation, more listeners into the podcast world and into the Hive Mind. So don't be afraid to give us a like if you like us. And if you don't, you can give us a 1 star, I guess, but please don't.
Please don't. I mean, okay, but like,
Yeah,
aw.
like I don't want to force you to give us 5 stars, but you know,
Yeah. But
I
every
guess
good
if you
review
have to give
helps
us a 1
us.
star,
Yeah.
yeah,
Or if you have feedback, right? I mean, it's good.
yeah,
for
give us
us.
feedback. I'd love constructive criticism. That's a good way. And I want to say thank you to the American Indie for the use of their song Rendezvous again. They have a great song, and I love it. I've actually followed their TikTok because I like their song so much. So thank you for the use of our song. Okay, we hope you enjoyed this literary journey as much as we did. If you're buzzing with excitement, don't forget to subscribe, email us, and leave a Hive 5 worthy review on your podcast listening app. Until next time, happy reading, and may your shelves be filled with tales as enchanting as a blooming garden. Keep the buzz alive, and we'll catch you in the next chapter. Bye for now.
Bye.